The moonlight shines brightly, cutting through the darkness and revealing rugged mountain peaks and deep, shadowy valleys. Countless assassins rush toward the protagonist, his presence so strong that purple lightning crackles around him, lighting up the surroundings. From below, a massive swarm of attackers charges toward him, their weapons gleaming under the moonlight. In a calm voice, the protagonist asks, "Blood and fear. Is that what you all really want?" Then, without hesitation, he raises his open palm and declares, "Then I will grant your wish." With one devastating attack, he wipes out almost all his opponents in an instant. The night transforms into a gruesome scene. Blood flows freely, drenching the ground in crimson, while the protagonist remains untouched. His gaze shifts across the battlefield, taking in the devastation. Calmly, he mutters coldly, "How weak!" As his eyes lock onto a small group of survivors who stand frozen, their faces a mix of fear and determination. The protagonist scoffs at his challengers. Above him, enemies descend recklessly, their weapons poised to strike. The air around the protagonist crackles with chaotic energy as he raises his hand. A radiant orb of purple power begins to form. In an instant, the attackers are caught in the storm, their advance stopped as they are hurled backward by the overwhelming force. The protagonist's piercing gaze locks onto his enemies. With a sinister grin, he declares, "See for yourself, the true power of the soul-devouring demon art." The scene starts with a loud rumble as cracks appear in the ground. Warriors standing nearby freeze, one of them gasps, realizing something powerful is awakening. Suddenly, a massive hand emerges, glowing with an ominous purple aura. It radiates an overwhelming sense of power. The warriors instinctively step back, gripping their weapons tightly, but their hesitation betrays their fear. The ground shakes violently as the being lets out a thunderous roar, its energy spreading like a shockwave. The warriors brace themselves, knowing the battle is far from over. The glowing hand presses against the ground, releasing waves of energy that crack the earth. A figure appears, shrouded in darkness and fear, asking in a low voice, "Is it truly impossible?" The focus shifts to the horrifying landscape of broken bodies and dead warriors huddled together, staring at the destruction in disbelief. Suddenly, one of them speaks. "For us to defeat the heavenly demon." Their words carry both fear and resolve. Before they can act, the purple hand lifts the crowd in its palm. Suddenly, the creature clenches its fist, releasing a surge of energy into the sky. The ground splits further, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. As the scene shifts, blood rains down, splattering everywhere. Amid the chaos, the protagonist with flowing white hair steps into view, his steady and calm presence signaling the start of something terrifying. The scene grows quiet, with blood soaking into the cracked ground. The MC looks at the destruction he has caused, a chilling smile appearing on his face. He lifts his head slightly, his red eyes glowing, and says, "This is the last one for the heavenly demon candidates." The battlefield is littered with fallen bodies, and an eerie stillness settles over the scene. The MC glances around and mutters to himself, "It's so quiet." But his voice carries no sense of peace. The MC's red eyes gleam with intensity as he clutches his chest in pain. Blood spills from his mouth as a dark, ominous energy swirls violently around him. "Has it started?" he mutters to himself. "The recoil of the soul-augmenting demonic art." The power he once sought by consuming thousands of souls for absolute strength is now exacting its price. As glowing blue specters emerge, writhing like restless spirits, the protagonist reflects bitterly. "There was always a price attached to it, but I believed I could overcome it, even though the other heavenly demons could not." The MC's expression shifts into a twisted grin, his crimson eyes glowing with malice. "I guess that was just my arrogance speaking," he mutters, acknowledging his hubris with a sinister smirk. Suddenly, the darkness around him grows deeper. One pair of violet eyes appears, then another, and another, until the abyss is filled with countless glowing gazes, their presence foreboding and chilling. The protagonist's grin vanishes, alarm flashing in his eyes. Realization hits him, something far beyond his understanding or control is stirring, and it's coming for him. A surge of violet energy shackles bursts from the darkness, streaking toward the protagonist and tearing through the air. The MC stands at the center of the shackles as the chains wrap around his body with force. Each chain glows with an ominous light, tightening and draining his strength. The MC struggles against the binds, his crimson eyes burning with rage. "Are you trying to drag me to hell?" he sneers. A guttural roar erupts from his throat, shaking the void. "Who dares to oppose me?" With a burst of power, he shatters the chains into fragments. But just as he breaks free, a swirling orb of ominous energy appears and expands rapidly. Realizing the danger, panic flashes across the protagonist's face as he mutters, "That wasn't it," before vanishing. The soul-augmenting demonic art was a forbidden technique, a method that consumes souls to gain strength, but it also carried a curse. In his final moments, the protagonist gazed at the world with regret, whispering, "I want to walk a completely different path in my next life." The scene shifts to a sunny day by a sparkling river, where fish swim freely. A handsome young man with flowing hair, RMC Tae-san, now the second son of the Golden Wall merchants, calmly watches the fish. So, a servant, interrupts, urging him to eat before the food gets cold. Tae-san sharply swings his hand, startling her into silence. Irritated, So comments on his strange behavior lately. Tae-san thinks to himself, "What a weak, fragile body." He mutters that he can't get used to his face because he looks like a girl. Seated at a table piled with food, the protagonist's expression is heavy, his chopsticks moving slowly, burdened by a weight only he can feel. "This body is weaker than I thought," he mutters, resting his head on his hand in frustration. So interrupts his thoughts. "Please don't say that. You'll get better soon." Her optimism contrasts sharply with his somber mood. She continues, "I heard an incredibly skilled physician is supposed to arrive soon." He doubts the physician's skill, never having heard the name. So urges him, "You need to think positively for positive things to happen." The protagonist reflects grimly. "It's been 10 days since I woke up in this weak body." Flashes of his early memories appear, his first moments of awakening. He groans, clutching his head. "Where am I?" he mutters. So's voice urgently calls, "Sir, you're awake." But he's completely useless. The protagonist thinks. He can't even dress himself or eat alone. The real issue is far worse. His meridians are disconnected, a condition that could kill him at any moment. Determined, he clenches his fist. "I can't believe this is what I've become. I have to act fast, or I won't survive." His thoughts sharpen. "I'll use Qi to temporarily reconnect the meridians," he resolves, visualizing the energy flowing through his frail body. His gaze shifts to the estate grounds outside. "I'll slowly reinforce them until they heal completely." But then, a grim realization hits. The only way to achieve this is through demonic arts. He reflects. The main challenge lies ahead, finding souls. In his past life, taking souls was second nature, but now, doing so would mean condemning himself to the very fate he tried to escape in this new life. But an idea strikes him. The knowledge he gained about demonic arts before his death might be the key to unlocking a new level of power in this life. His resolve hardens as he contemplates this path. He informs So, "I'm going out today." So beams. "Really? Where would you like to go?" "I'll bring you anywhere," he replies flatly. "I'm going to a courtesan's house." So freezes, her face flushing. "What? A courtesan house? Why are you surprised?" he asks. Hesitantly, she suggests. "Then it's better to bring warrior Chion." "Why, young master, you've never been like this before!" So exclaims. "Then come with me," he says sharply. Panicking, So waves her hands. "And no thanks." As the sun sets, So stands at the entrance, holding the protagonist's robes. She wonders, he's been acting so strangely these past few days. Wanting to visit a courtesan house. Did something happen to him? The protagonist breaks her thoughts. "Why don't I see the bodyguard?" So replies. "He'll be here soon. He's always training and protecting you." Then she adds, "Sir, don't be too hard on yourself." "Be hard on myself?" the protagonist asks, confused. So explains. "You seem like you've given up hope. Stay hopeful until that physician arrives." The protagonist reflects, after being reduced to this state, I can understand how others feel. She truly worries about me. This doesn't feel bad. Looking ahead, he says. "Looks like he's here." The doors swing open with a dramatic creak. So asks, "How did you know he's here?" The protagonist thinks to himself, how could I not sense that overflowing energy? A long-haired, blue-robed young man steps into the estate and greets. "It's been a while since you've called me, sir." He is Chion, a member of the Sword Dragon Corps and the bodyguard. The protagonist observes silently, this man is like a sword itself. His energy is so refined, it's hard to believe he's just a regular member of the Corps. I can feel how much he's endured over a long time to reach this level. The protagonist realizes, perhaps the Golden Wall merchants aren't just ordinary people after all. After some time, Chion announces, "We've arrived at the destination." The protagonist looks up to see the sign, Fragrant Flower House, one of the top 3 courtesan houses in Wuhan. Chion informs, "I'll stay outside." The protagonist frowns and asks, "Why?" Chion, slightly startled, replies, "Pardon." The protagonist repeats, "Why would you stay outside?" Chion explains, "That's because if something happens." Before Chion can finish, the protagonist cuts him off. "Are you confident you can reach me in time if anything happens?" Jion remains silent, not answering. The protagonist orders. Stop talking and follow me. You can have some fun too. Jion refuses. The protagonist looks at him with sharp, emotionless eyes and asks coldly. What, can't you have fun or obey my orders? At the coldness in the protagonist's voice, Jion feels a chill run down his spine and trembles. The protagonist then adds, It would be good if you could have fun and protect me, but if you can't, at least stay close to me. Jion replies, Yes, sir. Beads of sweat forming on his face. The protagonist smirks. All right, let's go. As they enter Fragrant Flower House, many courtesans greet them cheerfully. The scene shifts to the protagonist enjoying a feast, surrounded by courtesans while music plays in the background. After some time, the protagonist asks, Where's the bodyguard who came with me? The courtesans reply, Jion is waiting at the stairs, guarding the way here. The protagonist thinks he's so stubborn. While lost in thought, one of the courtesans offers him more drink. The protagonist declines, saying, You guys drink as you want. I can't drink. I'm not feeling too well. Another courtesan asks, What shall we do then? The protagonist responds, I want to hear the rumors about me. Tell me everything you know about the second son of the Golden Wall merchants. Time passes, and the protagonist hears that the previous owner of this body had 1,000 gold, one small manor, and a few courtesan houses as his inheritance. Because of his health, he had no power or influence. It seems everything else was given to his older brother Tae-soo. The protagonist thinks, this rumor is something everyone knows, but I've never heard it because I only stayed at home. Standing up, the protagonist says, All right, let's get started. He walks forward and adds, It'll be hard for me to handle all of you. Looking at one of the courtesans, he says, Just you would be enough. The scene shifts to a room where the protagonist sits, and the girl stands before him. Outside the room, the courtesans talk among themselves. Will he come back? But why did he only choose that girl? Back in the room, the protagonist asks the girl, How long have you been working here? She replies, About 10 years. The protagonist nods. That's good. Then let's start. Outside, the other girls continue to talk. Let's ask her what happened later. He's so frail and weak, it probably won't be much. He's so handsome, though. I want to go next time. Meanwhile, Jion is still guarding the door. Suddenly, a loud scream echoes throughout the Fragrant Flower House, causing the entire place to fall into silence. People start to look around in confusion. One man comments, That sound was impressive. While another girl blushes, explaining, I guess the sound isolation enchantment was released. The scene changes to the room, where the girl is screaming. The protagonist stands behind her, his demonic power manifesting as he uses it on her. He begins to extract something from her body. The girl continues to scream, her cries echoing without any breaks. The scene transitions to a glowing courtesan house, its lights shimmering beautifully against the quiet night sky. The wooden floors creak softly as the protagonist steps out, his movements deliberate and his presence commanding. Jion notices him immediately, concern etched on his face. He hesitates for a moment before nervously asking, Sir, are you all right? The protagonist halts, turning slightly to reveal a confident smirk. His eyes gleam with an enigmatic charm as he replies, I'm feeling amazing. Jion stares, baffled by his sudden change, while the protagonist strides away, leaving him puzzled. Inside, a commotion arises as courtesans rush in, their voices filled with urgency. What on earth happened? One of them shouts. The scene shifts to a lively room, vibrant with chatter and laughter. Amidst the group, a woman glows with an almost ethereal radiance, drawing everyone's attention. Curiosity takes hold as one leans in closer, whispering, Did he give you some kind of magical elixir? The glowing woman shakes her head gently. It's not that. It feels like I've been born again. The room falls silent for a moment. Meanwhile, the scene cuts to a bustling merchant house. So stands outside, diligently cleaning as she mutters to herself, I'm worried. Did he faint inside the courtesan house? Then, So notices the door creak open, revealing a familiar face. Clearly concerned, she runs toward the protagonist, shouting, Sir! She quickly asks, Did you visit the courtesan house? Are you all right? The protagonist, calm and composed, replies, If you're curious, ask him. Subtly pointing to Jion. So observes Jion questioningly. He looks fine, but there's a lingering doubt in her mind. He seems fine. She thinks, but is he really? The scene transitions to a room where purple energy swirls ominously. A powerful surge of energy fills the air, glowing with vibrant blues and purples. The protagonist is seated, his expression calm yet focused, as the energy courses through his surroundings. When the glow fades slightly, he murmurs to himself, I was only able to connect one meridian. I realize something about the soul reaping technique. If I kill people and absorb their souls, there'll be side effects. I must purify the unstable thoughts in the souls of living people and only absorb the purified energy. The scene begins with the protagonist seated quietly, deep in thought. His voice narrates. That's the most powerful kind of soul energy, the essence of the soul-augmenting demonic art. He recalls how the strength of a person's emotions directly affects the energy. The stronger their thoughts, the more powerful it is, he explains. That's why courtesans, who have endured countless hardships, are so unique. Letting out a faint sigh, he murmurs. But my body is worse than I thought. It seems I'll have to live at the courtesan house for now. The scene shifts to the glowing courtesan house at night, its lights standing out against the darkness. Suddenly, a loud shout breaks the silence. He's back! The courtesans gather, chatting excitedly. Every night, I can't wait to see him. The bustling energy fills the air, as everyone eagerly awaits what's to come. The scene opens with a group of courtesans admiring the protagonist. One of them says, "He's a true man among men." As he walks through the house, his commanding presence draws every eye. Courtesans gather around him, some offering shy compliments. The perspective shifts to a woman watching from afar. She sighs, her expression a mix of frustration and irritation. This is the owner of the fragrant flower house. That guy's here again. She mutters under her breath, clearly annoyed. Her mind races as she thinks, we tried stronger soundproofing, but it's useless. Every time he comes, all the girls flock to him. Because of that, our other customers are getting dissatisfied. She turns to Shadow and asks, why is he on the verge of death, acting like this? And why isn't he going to the Golden Wall courtesan house? Shadow offers, shall I investigate? The owner shakes her head. They're top merchants. If we act recklessly, it'll cause trouble. Thinking to herself, I need to find out what's going on, she says aloud. Just keep a close eye on him. The scene begins with the protagonist walking confidently, surrounded by a group of courtesans giggling and admiring him. One of the women exclaims with a delighted smile, Sir? Her tone is both surprised and excited. The protagonist's eyes sharp as he surveys the room, thinking, I was planning to take on a challenge. Where is she? Pointing towards the group of courtesans, he adds, I want to see the best of them. Bring them all here. A staff member hesitates. Pardon. As you can see, they're the most popular ones here. There's no way the rest would satisfy you. Unfazed, the protagonist steps forward, scanning the girls. I'm the one who decides if they catch my eye or not, he states. The scene ends with the courtesans exchanging glances. The scene begins with the protagonist standing before a woman emitting an ominous aura, her expression calm. He asks, What's your name? She replies, I'm Dana, her voice carrying a faint respect. The protagonist nods slightly. I see. I just need you for today. Meanwhile, two women watch them, whispering among themselves. I can't believe he chose her. The other adds, he must have unique preferences. The protagonist walks forward confidently, thinking, there's an extremely depressing energy in her soul. She's exactly who I wanted. The scene shifts to him opening a dimly lit room. This might be dangerous, but I'll manage. The protagonist is determined to connect his core meridian with her depressing energy. Standing in the room entrance, protagonist notices something. The protagonist narrows his eyes, muttering under his breath. Look at those fools! He commands sharply. Chion. Yes, sir. Chion responds immediately from behind, his voice filled with loyalty. A surge of dark purple energy envelopes the protagonist, radiating an ominous power. He says coldly, I need to borrow your sword. The scene intensifies as the protagonist draws the blade, energy crackling violently around him. With a swift, precise motion, he strikes. The blade embeds itself in the room's roof, and blood begins to drip from it. The perspective shifts to Chion, who stands in the distance, whispering in disbelief. An assassin. The protagonist stares coldly and says, You're still alive. In his thoughts, he reflects, I've gotten a little better, but executing delicate moves is still hard. The perspective shifts to blood pooling on the floor, a grim reminder of the brutal events that unfolded. The focus moves to Danyang, her hands trembling slightly as she struggles to compose herself. Her fear is evident. The protagonist, calm and composed, asks, I can leave the rest to you, right? Chion steps forward and responds immediately. Yes, sir. Turning to Danyang, the protagonist addresses her firmly. Danyang, was it? He smirks faintly, his expression unreadable but menacing. I'll absorb the hell out of your soul. The scene transitions to Yun Manor, where a seated girl listens to a subordinate's report. The second young master went to the courtesan house last night, the subordinate informs. The girl remains silent for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she asks, What do people call him nowadays? The focus shifts to Celine, Young Manner's bodyguard, who hesitantly replies, "The Night King of the Fragrant Flower House and the man with unrivaled potency." Frustration flashes across the girl's face as she slams her hand on the table. As she declares, "Bring me to the Fragrant Flower House. I must meet him." The view shifts to Hirin, Young Manner's soul child and the protagonist's fiancé,